In the last stream, we were working on trying to set up automation to automatically produce the compressed mechanism here using our previous tier basic mechanisms combined with compressed iron gears, invar rods, and lava. And we were trying to do that in the pressure chamber. In fact, right at the end of the last episode, we had 2 pressure chambers down. We had just automated the production of invar rods, and we were about to automate the pumping of lava into buckets so that we could fully automate the production of these compressed mechanisms. However, as you can see here, I have done a little bit of work between streams to organize the base a little bit, give us some more space, and try and make things look just a little bit less janky. For example, I have torn down the giant contraption that we previously had right here that was making those previously mentioned basic mechanisms, and I've moved that over to this corner of the base and kind of taken away all of the pretty pipes that we were using previously, because my plan going forward here is going to be to replace all of those pretty pipes with item importers, interfaces, and exporters from Integrated Dynamics to make a much cleaner, much tidier setup that is hopefully much more scalable in the future. This isn't working just yet. I do need to put down a couple of item exporters on the deployers, and we also, of course, need to get rotational energy over here. Speaking of which, over here, I have not moved the nether portal. It's almost the only thing that hasn't moved between streams. I have gone ahead and made this create train track just a little bit wider, and I've also tried to make it symmetrical on the portal as well, because I think it looks just a little bit nicer. The train has not changed. It does not look any nicer, but we can always change that in the future. And I've also gone ahead and centered the steam boiler that we made in the last episode on that platform as well. And the plan here is that going forward, as we need more create power, if it's necessary, we can just add either more create boilers into this little area, or we could just make the current boiler even taller and add even more steam engines to it. Speaking of which, the very first thing that I would like to do here is I would like to make 5 more of these create fluid tanks, because I want to turn our current 2x2 steam boiler into a 3x3 steam boiler. That is going to make it symmetrical on the platform here. If we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that, that should make a bigger boiler, which is now capable of using more steam engines, and it's also going to allow us to produce even more kinetic energy. Over here we have our sink. It's ready to go. We can do that to get water into the boiler, and that should be basically everything that we need. The final thing we are going to do is we're going to pump the lava from this fluid cell down and around into the blaze burner here. To do that, of course, we do have to grab the extra straw that we made in the last stream, and we have to grab some fluid pipes as well, all of which we have. And so now we should be able to do something like this. I'm of course going to disconnect this, which is fine. That's not going to do anything just yet. And then from there, we can just do something like this. And if we set the bottom here to output and we set this to extract, we should then be able to give our straw to the blaze burner. Real quick, I don't think it's going to matter, but I'm going to disconnect here and, excuse me, here, like that. And then if we give this guy a straw, he is going to start receiving lava, just like we saw at the end of the last episode. And that should be everything for our boiler. Let me quickly break and replace that. This is overstressed, which is interesting because I don't think that currently goes anywhere. Okay, so I've renamed this to Isaac. I think what might be happening here is that I think these might be server-wide. They might not necessarily link to an individual player by default. And so I'm wondering, when I set this to frequency 1 and press take, that immediately becomes overstressed. I'm wondering if somebody else on the server here has one of these energy transmitters that is also just set to network 1 and then has no name. And I wonder if that's causing a problem. I'm going to go ahead and just type Isaac again, because that seems to bring this online. And my plan going forward here is going to be to use these energy transmitters basically anywhere that we need stress, right? So instead of having to run the shaft all over the place, instead what we should be able to do is take some of the energy transmitters that we got previously and just place those down wherever they're needed to begin making our contraptions work. For example, over here, if we were to do something like this, I am hopeful that we can go in here, make sure this is also set to frequency 1, make sure it's also set to Isaac, and that should just start to produce all of our stuff. Now, currently that's spinning in the wrong direction. Thankfully, I'm going to turn it off temporarily just so that it doesn't keep making stripped logs that we can't use, but thankfully you can actually change the rotation at the steam engine. You'll see right now it's kind of spinning counterclockwise. If we come over here and we change that to counterclockwise, it's going to go ahead and spin that the other way. And now back over here, when we re-add this to the Isaac tier 1 frequency, we should start to see everything spinning the right way around. So let's do this and this, and you'll see those are now going in the right direction. Over here, this belt is currently moving in the right direction as well. We've got shaft taking power up to these deployers. We have our mechanical pump right here, and that is because on the lower level of the platform is where we have our coke ovens. The setup here has not changed. It's the exact same as before. I have added 2 more coke ovens to the setup, mostly just for symmetry, so we have 9 now as opposed to the 7 that we had before. And as I said, the setup is the exact same. We have a shop that is buying the coal ore that is then being squeezed with the mechanical squeezer and sent round via the pretty pipes to all of the coke ovens. And then from there, we have more pretty pipes that are pulling the coal coke back around into these generators right here and eventually into this drawer as well. The drawer's not showing it there because I'm in this kind of free cam view, but the coal coke is there. As you can see, when we get close, it says we have 1,289 at the top. And then we have all of the fluid pipes from Create connected up to here. And as you can see, that is now working, and that's pulling creosote from all of those coke ovens round into that spout, ready to turn our regular oak planks into creosote planks. And so really, I think all we need to do here is a little bit of exporting. We need to put exporters onto all 3 of these deployers to export all of the required items for the basic mechanisms, those being the andesite alloy, the cogwheels, and the shaft. Speaking of those guys, over here we have basically the same setup that we had before. We're going to make the andesite alloy here. That's going to get pumped around into this drawer. And again, this time we're just going to use an interface, and then we're going to use item exporters to move all of the alloy over to where it needs to go. And then some of that alloy is going to go here to make shaft. Again, item interface on here, item exporter over here to get that shaft to where it needs to go. And then finally over here, we're also going to use an exporter to export the shaft from here over to here to combine with the planks, which we can also export from here over to here to make cogwheels, and again, we can then export those. And so really, we just need a lot of item interfaces and item exporters to get everything sent around to the correct place. The other thing that I've done, if we press F4 again, is down here, I've kind of consolidated our ore processing system and set it up in such a way that I'm hopeful going forward we can add a bunch more of the different ores that we're going to need to this lineup. At the moment, we just have nickel and iron, but of course, going forward, we're going to want copper, gold, silver, tin, lead, aluminum, all kinds of stuff added to this setup. And the setup is exactly the same as before. We have an encased fan, we have our tier 1 buyers, we're then pulling out of those via these andesite belt funnels onto the depot, and then we have the pulling upgrade inside of the compacting drawer, pulling the actual fully cooked ingots off of the depot into the compacting drawer. And so really all we should have to do here is get a few more of these encased chain drives. We're going to want to put those on the back here so that all of these can rotate at the same time. And after that, we can just put one of our energy transmitters on the back of that encased chain drive. I'm hopeful we can rotate that. We totally can. And again, for now, we can probably set this to the same frequency. If we get to a point where we do run into a stress issue, that's when we can look at adding a different frequency to a different steam engine over on our boiler. And again, if needs be, we can also look at making the boiler bigger as well. But real quick, let me see, do we have any more chain drives? We do, perfect. And one more thing that we should probably make before we continue is the storage controller, because right now the iron and the nickel are not connected to our system. Last episode, we did have those connected with item interfaces, but a much easier way of us doing this is to connect all of our storage drawers to one centralized storage controller. And then from there, we can just connect that storage controller with an item interface, and it's going to make all of the items in all of the drawers accessible via that one item interface. To make this, we need 2 blocks of quartz, 2 drawers, and 1 redstone comparator. None of that should be particularly difficult for us. If we craft a couple of redstone torches here, we should be able to make a redstone comparator, and from there, we should be able to make 2 blocks of quartz, assuming that we have at least 8, which we do, 1 and 2, and from there, that's everything, I think, for the drawer controller. I'm assuming that we're probably just missing a couple of storage drawers to use in that craft. And so if we quickly do something like this, we can make a couple of storage drawers. It doesn't matter what storage drawer you use, and boom. And then finally, to actually connect all of this up, we are going to have to make a linking tool. The linking tool, again, super easy. 1 diamond, 2 gold, some paper, and a storage drawer. Not to be confused with a configuration tool. That is a different tool that does different things. So now that we have this, I'm pretty sure that we should be able to place our storage controller down. And I'm going to put this down, I think, kind of up in the air, just so that we don't have to run cable all the way down, because one big difference between the storage controller from functional storage and the drawer controller from the storage drawers mod is that the functional storage controller doesn't need to touch the drawers that it's connecting to. All we have to do, as the linking tool says here, right-click on a controller to set up the tool, then use it on nearby drawers to link. So if we right-click on here, we should then be able to right-click here, and both of those are now connected to this drawer. Nice. From there, if we quickly jump up here, we should be able to place our item interface on here. You'll see at the top that this does show that it has access to the nickel and the iron, and now if we go back up to the surface, we should be able to access all of that nickel and all of that iron from in here. That is, as soon as I actually connect this up, because right now that is actually not connected to anything. I did run a preemptive cable along the roof there just so we can connect things up, but you'll see right now that actually doesn't connect to anything. And so, somewhat awkwardly, I'm going to do something like this. The plan, of course, is going to be to move this. I actually haven't moved any of this between streams, so all of this is exactly where it was at the end of the last episode. Of course, the plan here is going to be to move those to a more centralized location, but for now, just as a proof of concept, if we do that, we should be able to see the iron and the nickel in the system despite not having iron and nickel item interfaces directly on those drawers. The chat is right that we should make sure these drawers are locked, which they are indeed. Perfect. And so yeah, now we can go ahead and throw down a bunch more item interfaces and exporters over on our other side of the base to hopefully re-automate the production of basic mechanisms. Okay, so a little bit of cable running later. We now have item exporters on the 3 deployers, and we have item interfaces and exporters on a bunch of the different components that we have around here. So right now, we just need to get a couple of variable cards and specify what we want to import and export to where. So we have our item interface down over here on the planks, and we have an item interface on this drawer here that's eventually going to get the andesite alloy. I say that, there actually isn't one on there. Let me quickly rectify that. If I throw an item interface down on the bottom, like that, that should make that accessible to the system. Of course, there's no andesite alloy in there just yet, but we can go ahead and export both andesite and iron to that drawer to make this work. Previously, we were going straight from the buyer into the basin for andesite. What I've done instead over here is we now have a tier 1 buyer buying andesite. Underneath that, we have a storage drawer with a storage downgrade and with a puller that is set to automatically pull the andesite from the store. And then I've put an item interface onto the bottom of that drawer. And so now basically our system is going to have access to a constant supply of andesite. And this kind of makes it so that our system can buy andesite whenever we need it, which is good for more than just making the alloy. It also means that if we need to craft with andesite, we can use the 64 that's in here, and then it will be automatically restocked using our bank balance, as opposed to us having to manually buy it every time that we need it. It also means that now, over here, of course, we can set this item exporter to export both iron nuggets, which are connected via that drawer controller, and andesite alloy. All we need to do is, just like before, take a variable card, and real quick, let me clear my inventory out ever so slightly. I didn't mention these framed stairs, but we'll get to that a little later on in the episode, I think. We probably don't need the pretty pipes connectors for now either. I've also not mentioned the smooth stone bricks, but we'll get to those as well a little later in the episode. Somebody did mention that we do have paxels in the pack here for mechanism. A paxel is a pickaxe, axe, and shovel all-in-one tool, and I think there's a non-zero chance that if I were to do something like this, and even though my tools are broken, can I do this, this, and this to make a paxel? I can, and it just makes a slightly less durable paxel than we would get if we used fully repaired tools, but that does allow us to clear 3 inventory slots down to 1 inventory slot and have just 1 tool that can do everything, which is pretty nifty. And so with the variable card here, we want to grab 1 andesite and 1 iron nugget, and then just like we did in the last episode, we should be able to create a list over here. So boom, and then we can type in list. Once we select the list, we are going to add an item, we're going to add iron nuggets, we're going to add another item, we're going to add andesite, and then now I think we should be able to put that into the exporter that's going to the basin for andesite alloy, and that should just export everything. So let's put you in here. We get a tick, and look at that. It's very fast. It immediately sends all of the iron nuggets and all of the andesite. Now we need to extract from here into both the mechanical saw and the andesite alloy drawer. Thankfully, we can actually do that again with integrated dynamics. So this is going to be a little bit of a kind of isolated setup. This is not connected to our main setup here, but what we should be able to do is put blank item export cards into the export all items slot, because now the only item available to this little network is this one here. And we're going to do the same over here as well. Export all items. In here, can I set the priority higher? I cannot, which is unfortunate. Although I think actually, if I open this up in the top left-hand slot, there's part settings. I'm going to set this to priority 1. And what that should mean is that going forward, why are we spewing iron nuggets is my next question. Oh, that's because we're exporting all items. Okay, that is my bad. That works over here because this is filtered to andesite alloy. Over here, though, I think we are going to have to specify that we only want it to export andesite alloy. Otherwise, it's just going to keep shooting the iron nuggets over there, which is not at all what we want. So, real quick, this, items, and andesite alloy. Boom. And then now, if we put that into the exporter that's going into the mechanical saw, and we make sure that that exporter has a higher priority than this exporter, this guy should get andesite alloy first. The priority still set to 1, and so the andesite alloy should go here, which it does. We might need to rotate that to make that work. Okay, so I've rotated the shaft by getting rid of the gearbox there, so now it's spinning the other way as it was before, and that should now work. So now we should see andesite alloy made here. It should go around into here. Of course, it's not going to be made here just yet because of the fact that we do not have any shaft power going up there anymore. Thankfully, that should be a fairly easy fix if we do something like this. We are going to need one more cogwheel to make that work. Thankfully, I think I still do have a bunch of cogwheels in one of these drawers. Oh, it's this one over here. This chest has all of the junk that we were getting previously. And if we do one of these, that should bring that back online. We should see andesite alloy go over into here. And just like before, I'm hopeful that it will kind of back up on stuff as we go. We also do, real quick, want to make sure we put another storage downgrade into the andesite alloy drawer, because again, we don't want to turn all of our iron and all of our andesite into andesite alloy or shaft. Instead, we just want to make 64 and then have the whole system back up once we get to that point. So that is more than 64. Let me do that. That should now stop, and you'll see this does have 3 shaft on it, so there's shaft just at the end there waiting to go in, which is good. And so now I'm pretty sure that's working. We just need to do the exact same thing over here. Here, we're going to get another item variable card with a list. This is going to have both the shaft from here and the planks from here. That's going to export round to here. And then finally after that, we also need to get variable cards for the andesite alloy, the shaft, and the cogwheels, and have those export to all 3 of the deployers, at which point we'll be back where we were at the end of like episode 3. Okay, so here we're going to do export andesite alloy. Here we're going to export cogwheels, and here we're going to export shaft. And I think finally this should be back online. Of course, we do need to re-engage the junk removal setup right here, so we need to get our drawback down. One thing that we should do, I think, is instead of just putting down another basic chest, I think we should put down a sophisticated storage chest. That's going to give us the ability to do the same thing we've done here, where we put in the stack upgrades so that the chest can hold a ton of what we get, because we get the same things every time. We get more buttons, we get more andesite alloy, more shaft, and more cogwheels, and maybe some iron nuggets. But we can have all of those things go automatically into this sophisticated storage chest. We can have those stack up into very large stacks, and then eventually we can also put a void upgrade from the sophisticated storage mod into that chest as well, which will then void excess items that are added to the filter. And so we can have it essentially delete any excess of all of these items once we've got a backlog of, 1024 or however many we fit into the stack that we create. So I think that should be fine. I am going to upgrade this, I think, to an iron chest, just so that we have enough upgrade slots to do both the stack upgrade and the void upgrade. But I think those should be all that we need. And then we could use integrated dynamics again here, but we can also use our pretty pipes with the extraction module. That will also work. Again, all we're going to do here is we're going to extract from here and then insert into here. So let's do this. Here we want to make sure that this is set to extract everything that's not the basic mechanism. So again, let me put that in, and then let's go to the items in here are disallowed. We're going to disallow the basic mechanisms. So everything that's not a basic mechanism should now make its way in. Everything else is going to go in here, and we have those slots available to upgrade this in the future to make sure that it doesn't back up like that one was going to momentarily. And so now I think the system is basically reset up, but in a much nicer looking fashion. And we also now have access via our main system over there to all of the shafts, all of the cogwheels, all the andesite alloy, all the andesite, and all of the oak planks. So we don't have to keep manually crafting those whenever we need them as well, which is good. Over here, the system was exactly the same. We've got an interface with an exporter. This exporter is just set to export all items because the drawer is locked. We don't have to filter it. And so, yeah, I think this wasn't necessary, but I think it looks a lot nicer, and I think it's going to be a lot easier for us to scale going forward. One other thing we can do as well, in terms of making this look just a little bit nicer, is we can get some facade for our integrated dynamics cables. This does require 4 slime balls and a mineral chunk. However, we do have cactus still growing over here. Let me quickly tear that entire thing down and replant 1. Over here, we can smelt that up. Chat is right here in that we can actually use the mechanical press to get way more green dye. I did not know this, but if we jump on this guy, instead of getting 1 green dye, we got 5. Nice. And so now in here, we should be able to combine that up with the white dye, which I'm hoping we have. We do not. That is fine. We have some bone meal. We can craft that down. And if we do this and this, that gets us 4-line dye. Do we have any dirt in the system? We do indeed. And so should be able to take 1, 2, 3, 4 of these, craft up 32 of these. And now if we craft these with the small smooth stone bricks, we should be able to get a bunch of facades that we can then use to cover up our cables. For example, right here, covered up. And we can do the exact same thing over underneath the shaft as well, right about here, just to make that look a little nicer. And then it's not really visible, but we can also do it there and there, just to make things look a little nicer as well. And so now that that is all set up and all good to go, and basically fully automated, we're now making money again, which is good. Still not making the creosote oil as fast as I would like, but that is not really something we can do much about unless we look at changing our creosote setup, which is not something I want to work on in today's stream. Instead, I'm now going to go ahead and reset up the 2 pressure chambers and look at actually automating the production of that second tier, the compressed mechanism. Okay, so a little bit of work later, and over here we have essentially the same setup that we had previously. So we have our blaze burner here with the basin above it. We've then got an exporter exporting iron and nickel to that basin, and a mechanical mixer on top of that connected to kinetic energy. Now though, what I've done is I've put down the invar drawer, which we don't technically need, but what I've done is I put that down and I've put an interface on it just so that we have access to invar in case it's needed in the future. And then over here we have the same setup as before. This one is exporting all items because it's locked and can only receive invar. This one is exporting specifically invar ingots because we don't want iron and nickel going to the rolling mill. I've then connected the rolling mill up with more encased chain drive to our pre-existing energy transmitter. That now, as soon as we get power to the blaze burner, should produce invar. That invar will be exported to the rolling mill. The rolling mill will make the invar rods, and then this has a puller upgrade pulling from the rolling mill into here. I do now realize we could have done the same thing with the cogwheel here. We don't need this little connector. We could just put a puller module in there and then move the cogwheel down, which I'll probably do because right now this draw for cogwheels is not actually available in the crafting grid, which is, I think, less than ideal. And then over here, we have our pressure chamber. This one is the standard 3x3 pressure chamber. On the back, we have an exporter. This is going to export iron. I've not started exporting it yet. And over here, we have a bigger pressure chamber. So you can build the pressure chamber, I believe, either as a 3x3x3, like this, a 4x4x4, like this, or I believe you can actually do it as a 5x5x5 if you wanted a really big pressure chamber. I've chosen a 4x4x4 here because what I am wanting to do is I'm wanting to get eventually 4 pressure chamber interfaces so that we can put down 4 item exporters and we can individually export the 4 different items that we're going to need for the compressed mechanism. So I want 1 interface for lava buckets, 1 for basic mechanisms, 1 for compressed iron, and 1 for invar rods. The reason that I'm not doing that on 1 interface with a list is simply due to the fact that the pressure chamber interface only has 1 slot at a time, and so trying to export multiple things can just get a little bit janky. But once we built it, this is now a slightly janky looking but functional pressure chamber interface, and my plan is going to be to have 4 pressure chamber interfaces on this side, all set to input, and then the 1 output over here to receive the final product. The reason I've built it without those inputs, though, is that if we want to make more of those pressure chamber interfaces, we need more compressed mechanisms, and so we are going to have to do a little bit of this manually before we can fully automate the setup. And so, real quick, let me grab my rotational compressors again, and we'll get these back online. I've put the pressure chamber valves down in such a way that we should be able to connect both of these up to the same pressure network, which I think is going to be ideal. Real quick, before we do that, over here, we do need to get lava to our blaze burner, and there's a few ways we could do that. We could, if we really wanted to, run a horrendously long fluid pipe from that lava tank all the way around to that blaze burner. The same is also true here, by the way. We have this empty fluid cell that's going to pump into the spout to make those lava buckets. However, alternatively, much like we've done with items so far, we can, in fact, use integrated dynamics to move fluids. There are fluid importers and exporters and fluid interfaces. For this, the fluid interface is just a bucket and some crystallized mineral chunks instead of a chest and crystallized mineral chunks. And then to make the fluid exporter is much the same. It is just the fluid interface with the output variable transformer. And so what we should be able to do here is place these fluid exporters on the bottom of the fluid cell, like this, and on the bottom of the blaze burner, like this. Make sure that blaze burner has its straw, like so. And then, of course, we can go ahead and connect that up to our integrated dynamics cabling. And then from there, we do need to run cable kind of all the way along and over to the pre-existing fluid tank. However, it has been brought to my attention that we might be able to make a monodirectional connector, which I think is going to allow us to wirelessly connect 2 cables together so long as they're in a straight line. It says can connect to other monodirectional connectors over a distance in a straight line. So if I make 2 of these, which we can do like this, I believe that what we can do here is we can connect these together so long as they're in a straight line, as is suggested. So I think if you have like 1 down here, like that, and 1 down here, those are, I believe, now connected. And that's essentially like a connected cable, despite the fact that there is no cable there. What we can do here is we can test this, of course, because I probably should have used one of these down here. So let me make sure I've got enough blocks. But what I think we'll do is, just to see if this works, let me get rid of this cable and let me put the connector here. And then on the other side, I'm going to break another cable. I don't know what the maximum distance is for the monodirectional connector, but I'm hoping that it's pretty far, because I'm hoping to get a straight line from over there down to our main pipe so we don't have to run a cable all the way along to that. Okay, so I think that's connected. For some reason, you can't ultimine this logic cable, so I've had to leave it there, but that looks over there like that's connected to this, despite the fact there's no cable connecting. We can, of course, test that, because now, if we have access to, for example, our oak planks in here, which we do, we know that that has indeed worked, which is good. So what we're going to do now then, I guess, is we're going to put a fluid interface down on the bottom of our fluid tank. And I am worried about the train, because the train will kill us if it hits us. So let's do something like this. I'm going to move this cable. We're going to put down the fluid interface like this. We're going to run cable down through the grass like that. We might have to build a little bit of a platform underneath there so that I can get down. And actually, I think I could probably put a monodirectional connector on right there, actually. We do have Quark installed, which lets you put blocks down under blocks as soon as you see those square brackets. And so I think if I get 2 more of those monodirectional connectors, we should be able to make this work. Okay, so I think this should work. If I do that, that has turned green, which makes me think it is connected. And so back over this way, what I've done is I've reconnected up that long line underneath that we just disconnected, which is why I still have 2 more of these monodirectional connectors in my inventory. And the reason for that is that I have gone ahead and put the other monodirectional connector right on the center of that line. So right there is where the second monodirectional connector is, and that connects in a straight line all the way over to that guy right there, which is pretty cool. It means we don't have to run a cable all the way over there, which is real nice. And so now, if we eat some bread real quick, we should be able to export the fluid to both the fluid cell and to the blaze burner. Now, at the moment, lava is the only fluid connected to our network, and so we could, if we wanted to, I think just put a variable card into the export all fluid slot like this, and that should export lava so long as that's set to input. It helps if you connect your cables up to the network, because down here, this is not connected. Hold on, let me go down here and let me make sure that this is connected. There we go. So now we should see that lava is being exported, and it is. Look at that, it exports it very quickly, which is good. However, if we want to add any more fluids to our network in the future, this is going to end up being a problem, because if I just leave that in there, we could end up with, oil or water or whatever fluid in that tank in the future the second we connect it up. And so I think alternatively, what we should be able to do is take a bucket, fill that bucket with lava, which we can do from this tank. People are pointing out that we might be able to just put the fluid exporter directly onto the spout. That might work, but I do quite like having this tank here for easy access to lava, so that if we do need it, we don't have to run all the way back over to that other fluid cell, and so I'm going to leave it like that for the time being. But back over here, we should be able to type in fluid, and then now if we put this in here, I'm hoping that this works in terms of setting that to lava. It does. And if we take 2 of those, we should be able to put 1 of those into the exporter under the tank, and 1 of them into the exporter under the blaze burner. So right down here, if I do this and export fluid, that should hopefully export lava to there. Of course, right now there is no lava because that tank is empty, but as soon as the train comes back around, I think we should see that working. And there we go. The blaze burner is online. The tank over here is now full. Invar is being made and being turned into Invar rods, and now we just need to export buckets around to here to make all of this work. And I'm also going to get these rotational compressors back online as well, probably with their own energy transmitter, which means I'll probably also throw down another steam engine as well. Okay, so we've got the pressure reset up over here. So on the backside now, we have our energy transmitter, which is connected to that newly made engine. For some reason, they sometimes go real fast. It doesn't seem to actually affect the speed, but it's going real quick. Anyway, over here, we then have the encased chain drive connected to the energy transmitter, and that's providing power to both of these rotational compressors. We can also add more of these going up if we need more pressure in the future. It also means that these are now sharing pressure from the one centralized source, and it means we also only need the one pressure tube. So these are filling up slowly but surely. The one downside to the bigger pressure chamber here is that it can hold more. It's got like a bigger volume, and so it does take longer to fill. You'll see here that the pressure is 2.48 bar, and you'll see the base volume is 128,000 milliliters. Over here, it is much, much smaller. The base volume 16,000, and so it takes way longer to fill this big guy up, but I think it's probably worth it. Speaking of which, I do want to go ahead and manually make another set of the compressed mechanisms here using, I guess, this recipe, so that, for one, we can test it, make sure it works, but also so that we can make the remaining pressure chamber interfaces to actually get this show on the road. So to make that happen, we need a bucket of lava, which we have. We need a compressed gear, which we also have, and we can make more of because we do have more compressed iron ready to go. We then need some basic mechanisms, which we did take off of the belt earlier in the episode. And then finally, we also just need some of these rods as well. And then finally, the other thing that we do need is some way of exporting the items into the interface. For now, I'm going to do a hopper because, again, this is very temporary until we can make the remaining interfaces. So here, let's do this, and let's do one of you, and then I believe just one of you, and 4 of you, like that. Now, it is going to take a second. I think the pressure needs to be high enough for the item to move over, and so it's going to take a second to make that happen, but hopefully, once they all move in, and once the pressure gets high enough, which it should already be, we're over 2 bars already, we should see this just get made. And once they're all in, we get a mechanism. Nice. And so now we do need to get an output for that. A draw would work temporarily, but going forward, it's not really going to work because we need to have the system export 2 different items. And so for that, we actually could use, for the first time, a 1x2 draw here. This is a draw that can hold 2 different items. If we put this on the front here, like that, that's going to give us both compressed mechanisms and also, ideally, the iron buckets should make their way into there as well. There are speed upgrades that you can make to increase a bunch of different machines from Pneumaticraft. They're thankfully not that difficult to make. The Pneumaticraft component upgrade here is actually just lapis. You can use lapis instead of the upgrade matrix. And then other than that, it's just sugar. I think we might be able to buy sugarcane. We totally can. So we can get a stack of sugar very quickly. Lapis, we do have in ore form, and again, we can buy from the store here. And so it's probably worth giving these a squeeze. I think I'm going to temporarily take a bit of a detour. I'm going to upgrade this squeezer again to a mechanical squeezer. And I'm also going to go ahead and make another generator, just like the ones we have downstairs, to power that mechanical squeezer so that I don't have to keep doing this manually. Also, what I think I'm probably going to do, once we have that squeezer, I think I'm also going to look at making another terminal, because you're not limited to having one storage terminal per network. And so what I think I'll do is I'll put another storage terminal down somewhere on this side of the base, just so that we don't have to keep running backwards and forwards every time we want to craft something. All right, and not too long later, we now have another terminal alongside that one over here. And I've put down a facade, and now we don't have to run back. We can just access it in here, which is good. Again, I'm going to set this to sort by item amount like that, and everything else looks good. So it turns out the squeezer is actually not very good for lapis. You only get 1 or 2 pieces, maybe 3 pieces if you're lucky and you use the mechanical squeezer. But what we can do is we can just go ahead and craft up a gold pickaxe, which does have Fortune 2 by default here. And then if we place the lapis down and brick it, we get more pieces. We got 5 there. Nice. And so if we just do something like this, we can very quickly get over a stack of lapis, and combining that up with the sugar does allow us to make these speed upgrades fairly quickly. I'll make as many as I can, and then from there we can put these into our interfaces like this, up to 10 in each interface, and just putting these in is going to make the interface faster at importing and exporting. I'm going to do the same over here as well. I'm going to move this, and we're going to put, I think we might as well go for 10 in there. I've only made a few, 16, but of course we can go ahead, and if we wanted to probably buy a stack of lapis, $16,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to the 8 million that we have. And then if I were to once again grab my builder's wand, which is completely destroyed due to all the building that we did between episodes, that's fine. Let me get another diamond wand here, get rid of that. And we can do the exact same thing again here, getting a ton of lapis. We're going to break all of that with the gold pickaxe. Perfect. The gold pickaxe does not have a ton of durability, but that is, of course, completely fine. We can make really as many of these as we like. And then, of course, sugar is just purchasable from the shop. It does appear that if we wanted to be efficient with our funds, we could take the sugarcane and run that through the squeezer as well. So here you get like almost 6 sugar per sugarcane. It is more efficient. At the same time, I don't know if it's worth the time and effort, especially given how cheap sugarcane is and the fact that we have so much money in our account right now. So I'm probably not going to bother with that too much going forward. Although for now we have managed to get 36 sugar in a fairly short period of time. Either way, boom. And let's put all those in the system, and let's see if we can't do one of these. Boom. Nice. So 23 more should be good. I guess eventually I probably will look at putting 10 speed upgrades into every single one of the input and output slots. For now, if we just put one in there, we should be able to try this again and see if it's any faster. So let's grab a couple of compressed iron ingots, and let's craft those up into the compressed iron gears. We'll do this. Perfect. Apparently we had a lot more compressed iron than I thought. We got 340 in the system. So I guess we'll actually go ahead and also take like a full stack of Invar rods here. And of course we should still have that bucket. That bucket is going to be in the drawer that I just put away. It's this one. It is. Let me take that bucket out and let's do one of these. Perfect. This does have the pulling module, so it should pull it right back in. And then ideally now, if I do this, that should go in way faster than it did the first time. Same is true for this guy. If I put that in, it should just go in. Should just go in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Should also just go kind of directly in. You'll see they're going in way faster than they did previously, and they should also come out way faster as well. So let me take you and put this down here. And then I guess here we can probably now put this in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of those. Ideally not the bread. And then from there, we just need to get 4 buckets of lava, and we should be able to do 4 more batches of this. Of course, the idea is that momentarily we are going to go ahead and hopefully fully automate this. Okay, so that is done. We got 24 of those ready to go. Of course, once we got this fully automated, we are going to look to auto-sell those as well. For now, though, let me go ahead and take a few of these out, and let's see if we can't make some more of those pressure chamber interfaces, which I might not be able to make We probably need more hoppers. I did accidentally turn all of my pressure chamber wall into pressure chamber glass earlier, so I think I am fully out of that. Thankfully, we can make more of it fairly easily, and I don't think we're going to need more than 16. I just need 2 more batches of this. Perfect. And then we got to be quick here because I don't want too much pressure to escape, and it will escape as soon as we break the glass. So if I have this in my offhand, I'm hopeful that we can do this. We totally can. With this, and with this. Perfect. And so now, we probably did lose some pressure there. Although no, we're actually basically still up at 5 bar, which is good. So, now what we're going to do is we're going to put down our item exporters over here. And the crucial step here, I think, for a lot of what we're going to do now is to limit the speed of these item exporters. And before we do that here, I'm actually going to go and do that over on this guy. This guy is currently connected up and ready to go. This is going to make our compressed iron. We did run into a bit of a problem with our last setup. So I had this setup before where we just had this exporting iron. The trouble is that the pressure chamber can seemingly hold an unlimited amount of items. And so if you export iron here, the iron will go in, and eventually the drawer here fills up because it's got a downgrade. The exporter, the pressure chamber interface that's set to export, also fills up with compressed iron, and then all the other iron just starts to back up inside the pressure chamber, and eventually you run out of iron. So when I came back on, I realized that all of the iron from my compressed drawer downstairs had all been sent to the pressure chamber, which is not ideal. One thing we can do here is we can change the speed of this exporter so that it doesn't export quite so fast, and then if we want to, we could even take it one step further and have the item exporter stop exporting iron if this drawer here is full of compressed iron. And I think we probably want to do both of those things. So to do that, we're going to need a couple of things. First of all, we do need to put an interface there to allow that to be connected to the system. On the bank side here, we're going to get another variable card, and we're going to set that to iron so that it can actually export iron. But then when we put it in, we can change the default stack size so that it doesn't move an entire stack of iron at a time. Because right now it moves items very, very quickly, which makes it powerful in terms of item logistics, but in this specific circumstance, it's not particularly useful for us. So what we're going to do is over in here, we're going to change the settings on the item exporter. The first thing we're going to do, in the top left where it says part settings, right now it says tick per operation 1, which means it's going to do the item exporting every single tick. So 20 times a second, that's basically as fast as anything can go in Minecraft. If you change this to 20, that's going to go and do the exporting once every second. Still quite fast because, again, by default in here, if we click the plus sign next to export item, we can change the properties, and by default, if we go across to item transfer rate, you'll see it's set to 64. So by default, it tries to export a full stack of items every tick. So it tries to export 20 stacks a second, which is why this ends up filling up very, very, very quickly. However, we can change this to 1 item at a time. And now, because we've changed both the part setting to 20, make sure you click save. If you don't click save, it won't save. I do it every time. Click save. Now, if I put this in, it will export 1 item a second as opposed to 64 items a tick. And we're going to do the same thing over here as well. We're going to slow these guys down so they don't export things quite so fast. Before I put this iron exporter in, though, the next thing that I would like to do is have it not export if this drawer is full. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated. There are easier ways of doing this, I think, with pipes that require redstone, because one thing you can do if you want, you can get a redstone upgrade, this one right here, from functional storage. You can put that into the drawer. At that point, the drawer will then emit a redstone signal equivalent to its fullness level, so you could have it then export and have whatever you're using to import turn off whenever your drawer is quite full. We're not going to do that because I don't think that you can control the item exporters here with redstone. Like, I don't think that's doable. But what we can do is we can make what's called a reader. Specifically, we want the inventory reader, which is this one right here, from Integrated Dynamics. If we put this inventory reader onto our drawer, let's say right about here, we can then connect that up with our cable, like this. And in here now, we can read a couple of different attributes about this drawer. For example, the one that we want is either inventory full, which is either going to be true or false, or we could do inventory count, and you'll see that right now it's set to 44. I think what we'll do is we're going to go for inventory count. I'm going to take that variable there, and we're going to use that variable in our logic programmer. So what I need to do here is I need to make a variable storage, this guy right here. That variable store needs to be connected to our system just somewhere. It doesn't necessarily matter where it's connected. All that matters is that it is connected, because we need to put variables that our system needs to know into that variable store. Before we do that though, let me head back over to the logic programmer so we can configure some logic, because what we're going to do here is we are going to set up a system. So I need a couple of variables. The first variable that I want is an integer, which is just a number, and we're going to say 64, okay? Because that's a stack. We want to say that if there are 64 or more items in that storage drawer, the one with compressed iron, then stop exporting iron. So to do that, we can go to greater than or equal to, and we can say that if the number in the drawer, this number here, if the inventory count is greater than or equal to 64, then that's going to create this variable here. So this variable card is either true or false, and it's true or false based on whether or not this variable card is bigger than 64. And so it's a little complicated, but we've got three variables here. One that has the number of items in that drawer, one that is just the number 64, and then one that is true or false depending on whether or not this card is greater than or equal to 64. Next up is where it gets slightly more complicated, but I think this is the last card we need. We need to go to a choice, which is this here. And this is like an if statement. And so what we're going to say is we're going to say, actually, before I do that, let me make one more item card. This item card we're going to have just be blank, okay? So it's not set to any item. This one here is set to iron ingots. So going back to choice here, the choice is going to be an if statement. And the if statement is going to be for this variable card. So remember, this one is either true or false. It's true if the number is bigger than 64, and it's false, I believe, if the item is less than 64. And you'll see here it says if the first value is true, the second value is taken, otherwise the third value is taken. So basically, if true, do this. If not true, do this. For us, if it is true, that means that the number of items in the chest is bigger than 64. In that case, I want to export nothing. This is our card that has no item. You'll see it says value nothing. We don't want to export anything. If it's false, if the number of items in that drawer is less than 64, we want to export iron. And then we just need to put a card in here like this, and we now have our final variable card. So, if I'm not mistaken, all we should need to do now is place these variable cards in the variable storage. The reason these need to go in variable storage is so that the system knows what they are. Because if I put this into the exporter and the system doesn't have these in variable storage, it doesn't know what variables I'm talking about. So those do need to be in there all the time. Back over here though, now if I put this in export item, like so, it should export items until this hits 64. As soon as this hits 64 or goes over 64, it should stop exporting iron and everything should be good. That's the plan. Whether or not that is going to work is to be seen. Let me take some of these speed upgrades out and let me put them in over here. We should definitely just go and make some more as well. In fact, I do have 19 on me. Let's do this, and let's also... I want to put it in here as well, but it's a little awkward given the fact that I'm going to have to break this. But that's fine. Let me break this. Let me put this in here, and let's do that. So now, that is at 64, and so we should see this stop exporting. Which it has. Nice. And I think that's fine. I might even slow this down a little bit. 20 might be too fast, because there's probably still some in the back end there. Like if I take one out here, I'm pretty sure it's going to fill up straight away because there's a bit of a buffer. But as soon as we go down below 64, we should again see more iron getting exported. It is. And the cycle is going to continue. So again, a slightly convoluted way of doing it. There are definitely simpler ways of doing it, but I think this is the cleanest way of doing it because we don't end up with redstone running all around the base. And so now we're never going to fill this thing up with iron because we should hopefully only ever export iron when we don't have enough compressed iron ingots. So now, finally, the last thing we need to do is move this guy out of the way. We need to connect all 4 of these up. And of course, we need to run that down and connect it to our pre-existing cable line. We need to set the specific items we want to export here. And the final thing that we have yet to do is we actually need to auto-craft those compressed iron gears, which is kind of where we left off at the end of the last episode, because we realized that this wasn't going to work in the way that I wanted it to work due to the fact that for some reason the pusher and puller modules do not want to work with the crafter. So let me quickly move this and let's figure out a way to reset this up that actually works, and then we'll see about finally exporting everything that we want to export around to this big old pressure chamber. Okay, so I've thrown down the crafter here. The crafter does retain its configuration, which is good. And what we're going to do here is we're going to export via a list card. We're going to export the compressed iron and the iron nuggets. So this also does return its inventory when you pick it up, which is pretty nifty. One thing I have done, you can craft the logic programmer. I made a new one. The old one is still over there. But you can craft the logic programmer into a portable logic programmer, and then you can just configure these cards on the fly, which is going to make life a lot easier. Because now we can go list, add item, compressed iron, and add item, iron nugget. Boom. And then we're going to put that in here. Again, we still have it pre-configured to where it's not going to use more than the 2 slots. That is fine. It is going to stack up on like 4 stacks of compressed iron gears here and then a 5th stack here. I think that's fine. I don't think it's going to matter too much that we have that. Again, the puller doesn't work for some reason. That's also fine. Over here, I just want to create one more item card that is going to pull just compressed iron gear. So item, compressed iron gear, and boom. And then over here, we've got just, again, another little mini network with an interface and export items. So that's going to fill up. Good. And then this is, of course, going to back up as well. That's fine. I think you can do this and this. You can, again, put random junk in and click remember. And that is going to remember these and kind of lock it to only making 2 stacks. And you could even do the same with 1 stack as well if you really wanted to minimize the amount of waste. But I think for the most part, this is fine. And so now that's there. We have a interface underneath, so that's available to the system. And so I think now we're almost good to go. Let me create another card. I need an iron bucket. We're still gaining iron, which is good. Let's take this. We're going to create a new item card. This time the item card is going to be for a bucket. So item and bucket, and we're going to say to export that bucket over to here. So export item bucket. Perfect. So that's going to do that. That's good. Over here, this then needs to be connected to the system because right now it's not connected. We are completely out of logic cable. Can I get some more of that? I can. We do now have the auto squeezer actually, and so real quick, I should put the full stack of redstone ore here into the squeezer just so that can kind of slowly but surely make redstone for us, so we don't have to keep manually doing it whenever we need it. And back over here, let's put you there. You can put these interfaces directly on top of that, like so. And then I don't want that. I mean, I guess we could put this here, but it means making another, you know what, that's fine. We could put a facade there. And so that's now available. And so I think we're basically good to go. This is not connected, but once we connect this up, everything should be fine. Of course, the final thing actually, right now we're not getting any energy to our crafter, right? So this is going to run out of power. However, what we can do, you guessed it, is use integrated dynamics here to move energy as well. If we make a energy battery, which is going to require redstone, so it's a good thing that I did set this up. So over here, let's take some of that redstone out. Let's dump it into here. Let's craft up a block of redstone, or 3, so that we can then make another energy battery. Then we can use that energy battery to make the energy interface, and then from there we can make at least 1 energy exporter. And just like we've done with both fluids and items, we should now be able to put the energy interface onto some of our generators downstairs, and then put the energy exporter onto the crafter. So if I were to put the energy interface down like that, and then try and connect this up to our pre-existing system, which of course is going to require even more logic cable. Again, thankfully we did just make some more redstone, some more logic cable should now be very doable. In fact, I should be able to get almost a full stack there. It's just sticks that we're missing if we wanted even more. And then up here, we're of course going to go ahead and put down a cable, put down the energy exporter right about there. In here, I think we can just go export energy. I don't think we have to configure that in any specific way. And then down here, we want to run cable carefully from here up and around to here. Cool. I don't think that's going to require any other kind of setup. I hope. I guess the question then is whether or not this actually stores energy, because it looks like it doesn't actually store energy, which could be an issue for us. If that is the case, it isn't going to be a massive problem. First of all, let's see if this is getting power. It looks like it is. I feel like it was on less a second ago than 36,700. I feel like the bar was lower. If this is not working though, one thing we could do is just make another battery, have the generator export its power to the battery, and then put the energy interface onto the battery as opposed to putting it onto the generator itself. Let's give that a try. So if we move the energy exporter off of the back of this generator, so we're going to get rid of this. And instead we just put the battery here. I think that battery should start to get power from this generator. Again, assuming that this isn't taking all the power, which I don't think it is. So I would hope that this gets power. I then actually don't think that you need an energy interface on this. I think just connecting that with cable makes it accessible to the whole system, and so I would hope that this guy's full. Nice, so that totally does work. Good. And so now, we just need to export the items over here. So let me run cable over this way. Like this, we're gonna go down and we're gonna go across to bring all of these online. I'm gonna slow all of these down so that, again, we're not trying to export 64 stacks every tick into the pressure chamber. Instead, I'm gonna set all of these, for now, probably just to like do every second. So we'll say once every second you can send the items that you want. Ticks per operation 20, ticks per operation 20, and then we'll set all of these to 1 second. Then we're gonna get a variable card for each and every item that we want to export. Alright, so I've made a variable card for the compressed iron gears, the lava bucket, the inval rod, and the basic mechanism. And over in here, I've also reconfigured these to send 1 item per transfer for all 3 of these. And then for the last one, I've set this one here to do 4 per transfer, and that's for the basic mechanism. And so I think now we should be good to go. If we tell this guy to export compressed iron gears, this guy to export lava buckets, this guy here to export the inval rods, and this guy here to export 4 basic mechanisms, we should see this work. Let me distribute the speed modules here a little bit to try and make that a tiny bit faster. I'm also going to go ahead and steal some back here temporarily. We'll make some more in just a second, but right now I think we're fine on compressed iron. I just want all of these to be of a similar speed. Let's do this and let's do that. So that's going to export 1 of each item per second over into here. I don't know how we've managed to get pressure chamber glass in there. One thing we are going to have to do, of course, is connect this up to the system like that and like that. That's going to give the system access to the buckets once they are done. So let me figure out where we're going to connect that up, and the answer is right about here. Boom. So now I think that should be good to go. I think we should see the lava bucket getting exported empty over to the depot as soon as it's ready. From there over to here, it is. That fills it up, it gets pulled in there, it gets sent back around. And so the thing then is just whether or not the whole system is fast enough, right? The speed upgrades on the output side are definitely fast enough. What we might have to do, like the only potential thing we might have to do, is kind of slow down how fast everything's being exported, depending on how long it takes the system to make lava buckets. We can make the whole system faster at producing lava buckets, I think, just by having more buckets in the system. The more buckets we have, we should see this constantly making lava buckets and putting them into that drawer. The drawer here does have a stack downgrade. I think if I take the downgrade out, it can start up to 32 buckets as opposed to 1, which I think is fine. So let's put that upgrade away for now. And that should, hopefully, keep things going. It looks like... Oh, of course, the trouble now is these guys over here. We're not actually making these. That is my bad. Let me break this for a second so it stops exporting, because right now we're actually just exporting non-stop lava buckets, which is not what we want. Over here, we need to change this. Right now, we're selling all of our mechanisms, and I think that actually the slowest part of our whole endeavor is going to be the production rate of the basic mechanisms here, potentially. Let me put this back here, and we'll lock that to the basic mechanism. So boom, and boom. And then we need an interface, of course, on here, like this. I might put that on the side because I don't really want to break the pillar here downstairs to make that happen. Let's do this, and no, I'm not going to do it. I was going to bring it around the back, but it's going to look way better if we just go down through the floor like this and connect it to a pre-existing cable down there. And hopefully once that's good to go, then we can turn this back on. I am going to slow this down. I'm going to say that I want all of these to work on I'm going to say 60 seconds. I'm going to say once every 3 seconds, send things over. It's way slower than it used to be, but that's still pretty fast. And I think it might still be too fast given how quick things are coming in. And we still might have to tweak this a bit more to try and make it work, but it might work. And then we can obviously go ahead and set up an auto seller to auto sell the new mechanisms. And at that point, we should hopefully be making even more money than we were previously, and we should finally have fully automated the production of these compressed mechanisms. So it does appear that once again, the limiting factor now is just creosote. Let me make sure these coke ovens are online. They are. These ones are actually full. I don't think it's a transfer speed issue. We did put a case down here. Okay, so removing the casing does seem to have worked. I don't know why making it an encased pipe broke it, but getting rid of that casing does seem to have fixed the issue, and this is now full of creosote, and these are being made, which is good. Those are connected and available to the system, so we should hopefully see them exported over here as well, just as soon as we do one of these. Hopefully that gets exported and things start to get made. I do not know what was up with that, but this is working now, and things are going good. So now we just need to auto sell that final product. So I guess what we'll do is we'll put the seller down maybe right here, and if we just get another pusher module, we should be able to export into the seller. I am going to keep some of these, of course, in the system just to make sure we have them for crafts if we need them, and of course we can also take the pusher module out temporarily in the future if we wanted to allow it to work. This direction here is south, so let's set you to south. It shouldn't matter for anything that's not this, because I'm pretty sure it's not going to try and sell the buckets automatically. But there we go, we are selling the new mechanisms. We should finally be making money again. I don't think that it's going to put, I don't think you can put anything in here that can't be sold, so I'm pretty sure that this is just going to work. And yeah, I think with that, we have managed to automate this setup. What I'm going to do, real quick, I'm going to make more of those speed upgrades, which I think is just a case of us getting more sugar, because I think that's kind of our limiting factor now. The limiting factor could well be pressure. Actually, that could potentially be another issue for us. Let me put these away. Let's get more speed upgrades, and I'm going to put those into all of the remaining places that don't currently have those speed upgrades. For example, I can see that we're not backing up on compressed iron here, and that could be a speed upgrade thing there, but it could also be just the fact that we're not exporting fast enough. We set this to 1 every second, which might just not be quick enough. It is also a pressure issue though as well. Okay, so pressure is going to be a problem. That is fine. What I'm going to do, somewhat awkward, I'm going to disconnect this again. We might do that quite regularly because I just don't want this pressure chamber filling up with junk. I don't want to look in here and see, 50 stacks of compressed iron gears. So I think what we're going to have to do is next time or between streams, I will look at making potentially a few more of these rotational compressors to try and generate more energy. It's also possible that if we add our rotational speed controller here, we might be able to get more pressure by using more of the stress units that we're generating over there to produce more pressure more quickly and get things moving and producing faster as well. But I believe that we do have the infrastructure now to fully automate the production of these compressed mechanisms. And next time we can come back, we're going to look at getting the tier 2 permit, and we can look at getting into this plastic production with the Modpack and unlocking the electric age. But of course, that is a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Forever Factory there.